Hello and welcome to Frankly Speaking, where we dive deep into regional headlines and speak with leading policymakers and business leaders. I am Katie Jensen. As Gaza plunges deeper into catastrophe, Israel's blockade has stopped aid for over a month. 60,000 children face malnutrition. Hospitals lie in ruins, and the United Nations has called it a killing field. On this episode, we're joined by Palestinian Authority State Minister for Foreign Affairs and Expatriates, Dr. Varsen Aghabekian. We ask why the peace talks collapsed. Will Israel be held accountable for strikes on hospitals and the deaths of aid workers? And is the Palestinian Authority truly prepared to govern both Gaza and the West Bank after such devastation? Minister, thank you for joining us on Frankly Speaking. Now, Israel has intensified its blockade on aid to Gaza. No aid has been allowed in for a month and a half. We're seeing 60,000 children on the brink of malnourishment. Frankly speaking, what can be done to ensure the unimpeded entry of essential supplies into Gaza?
Well, what can be done is a stopping of this genocidal war. This impunity, which Israel has been enjoying for a long time, only begets more violence. And today we see only destruction and killing of more civilians in Gaza. What needs to be done is for the international community to say international law must be complied with, and it's time to say enough is enough and halt this aggression, this genocidal war with increasing brutality by the day on Gaza.
Of course, it feels like we haven't seen that. We saw the ceasefire agreement on Gaza that was brokered in January this year. Now, it ended up falling apart within weeks. Since then, we've seen a significant increase in hostility and suffering. So, Minister, in your opinion, what were the main reasons that the ceasefire deal fell apart?
The ceasefire deal will continue to fall apart because Israel has no intention of stopping this war. And they have said it on and on. And its Minister Katz the other day said, we don't intend to even leave Gaza, Lebanon, or Syria. So these are very clear messages to the international community that this aggression, this war will continue and will only bring more disaster to the Palestinians in Gaza and probably the people in the region at large.
Now, of course, we've seen several plans presented. The Trump administration presented his vision for Gaza that saw the displacement of thousands of Palestinian people to Egypt and Jordan. He also talked about his plans to turn the Gaza Strip into a swanky Riviera. Tell me, how do you respond from these kinds of plans presented from foreign policymakers?
Well, we know that the USA has unwavering support to the Israelis, and it is greenlighting and emboldening this occupation. Any plan for Gaza or the Palestinians must respect the dignity and the rights of the Palestinian people. Any other plan will not work, and it will not bring peace to the region. What will bring peace to the region is respect of Palestinian rights and seeing them as equal and rightful to their own land as enshrined in international law.
Well, let's elaborate on that a little bit, because you had similar sentiments. The last time you and I spoke on this program was November last year, and you said that peace will simply not be sustainable unless the rights of the Palestinians are properly addressed. Tell me, what do you see as those specific rights if we are to come up with a realistic and durable peace plan?
These rights, as I said, are enshrined in the division plan in 1948. The plan said two states. One state is on the ground today. Now it's a time to materialize the second state. That second state has received member status at the UN, and it has been recognized by today 149 countries. And we hope that other countries will be joining. So that state has its borders. It's known as the 1967 lines that were occupied by Israel. And international law is very clear about it. This is not a contested land. This is an occupied land, and it is the land of the state of Palestine.
Well, let's talk about the US role in all of this, because despite the controversies during his previous term, the last time you and I spoke, you were reasonably optimistic. You had some hope about Mr. Trump's return to the White House. So tell me, given now we're several months in April of 2025, how optimistic, pessimistic are you given Mr. Trump's previous policies on Jerusalem and the Abraham Accords? And what has transpired during his second term so far?
I know the majority are pessimistic, but we have to remain optimistic. If President Trump wants to forge peace and he wants to leave a legacy of peace, then that peace has a framework and it entails the respect and the rightful rights of the Palestinians. So I remain hopeful that this will get to the table of President Trump and the ears of President Trump, and he sees that the future of the Middle East includes the rights of the Palestinians on their state as enshrined in international law.
And a number of deadly attacks have now taken place since Mr. Trump has returned to the White House. Just days ago on Palm Sunday, we saw Israeli forces attack the Al Ali Arab Hospital in Gaza. Now, they claimed it was being used as a Hamas command center. The missile attack meant that critically ill patients were left on the street after fleeing the attack. It's not the first time they've targeted this hospital. Tell me, are Israeli attacks of this kind ever justified, even if Hamas has been advising its fighters via telegram to use civilians and hospitals for protection?
The genocidal war in Gaza is not justified in any way you look at it. And bombing a hospital that is partially operating and part of a system that has been devastated in the last 19 months is not justified by any means. This is the only place that is capable of doing the minimum to injured Palestinians. And bombing a Christian hospital on a Palm Sunday is extremely telling. And it has to tell the world that this brutality is definitely not justified. What is resulting from this brutality is just killing more civilians. And we've seen it. Even after the ceasefire, we have seen that over 2,000 Palestinians have been killed. And these Palestinians are civilians. They have absolutely nothing to do with Hamas or with, some of them don't even know what this war is all about. So this genocidal war is not justified in any way you look at it.
Tell me, we've also seen Israeli forces recently kill more than a dozen Palestinian Red Crescent workers as well as civil defense workers. That took place by Rafah in an apparent attempt to try and cover up these incidents. What can you tell us about these attacks and what is being done, if anything at all, to try and hold those responsible accountable? What's being done to bring them to justice?
Well, today nothing has been done, because everything passes with impunity. I mean, killing aid workers and trying to hide the crime, which is an addition to thousands of crimes throughout this genocidal war and before, needs to move this world. And it says a lot. If this doesn't move the world, what will?
Well, with that in mind, where do we go from here? What are the options for peace? We saw the Arab League recently presented a three-stage reconstruction plan for Gaza in that extraordinary Arab League summit meeting. But the Cairo plan, as well as previous peace initiatives, they've been rejected by both the Trump administration and Israeli leaders as well. So what are the prospects for its acceptance and implementation? Is that likely at all?
Well, we have to continue using our diplomatic efforts. I mean, we know that this military route is getting us nowhere. And our military efforts are directed at mobilizing the international community with several ventures today on ending occupation. We have the forthcoming international conference spearheaded by France and Saudi Arabia to take place in New York mid-year. And we have the Global Alliance on the Materialization of the State of Palestine. And we will continue our efforts on the recognition of Palestine and the full membership efforts, as well as our efforts with the international organizations such as the Human Rights Council and the UNESCO. The tool is today international law. And for the whole world, it is important to understand that if Palestinians cannot resort to international law and cannot have countries comply with the ICJ ruling, which said it very clearly what needs to be done, who do we resort to?
And I think that's a big question of the hour because, again, we've seen this reconstruction plan in 3 stages presented to Gaza. This is obviously in polar opposites to what we've seen Israel or Mr. Trump present as well. Do you think a peace plan from the Arab League, such as we've seen presented so far in Cairo, does that stand any realistic chance of being implemented? And what are the biggest barriers to that happening?
I think there is a big chance for it to be implemented if there is, as we see, of course, unity on the Arab front. And we've seen that in the latest summit. And we are seeing support and unity from the Islamic organization. We've seen unity from European countries and others, giving us positive vibes about the plan and the possibility of sustaining that plan in the future. We need to do a lot of convincing on that part with the American administration, because that is the only plan today at the table that may move us forward. And it is very much, there's a consensus on it, and it is in line with the Arab Peace Initiative of 2002. And it is something that Arabs and Muslim countries are okay with.
And then on the flip side, we see Israel's latest ceasefire proposal. That reportedly calls for the disarming of Hamas and the release of all living hostages. Minister, do you see any realistic path forward for a durable ceasefire under these conditions?
Well, a durable ceasefire entails, of course, meeting the demands of both parties. But today, the Palestinians have been crushed for the last 19 months. A durable peace should bring them an opening of the borders, feeding of the people, starting immediate relief on the ground, and doing whatever it takes to have this genocidal war stop. We hope that reason prevails on all sides, and we reach this stage today before tomorrow.
Well, it feels like the world is watching the ongoing protests against Hamas ruling over Gaza, but frankly, hearing no slogans in support for any other faction. So, Minister, how do you respond to critics who suggest the current Palestinian leadership does not have the popular legitimacy to be able to represent all Palestinians accurately across Gaza, the West Bank, and the diaspora?
Well, look, as long as Palestinian rights are not respected and Palestinians are crushed on a daily basis, you will continue to hear slogans while seeing that the Palestinian Authority has been undermined in various ways. It has been undermined by Israel through withholding its tax money. It has been underlined through Israel's brutality on the West Bank, where there is no Hamas. Or no Hamas as active as it is in Gaza. All of this raises tensions and raises people's emotions. If we see something moving on the political track, people will start realizing that there is a hope for the future. And today, whoever is responsible or who has the mandate on the occupied state of Palestine is the Palestinian Authority, and that authority needs to be empowered to be able to meet the needs of its people. If the authority is not able to meet the basic needs of its people, people will continue speaking negatively on the authority's role and its practices on the ground.
Well, you have consistently identified the PLO as the only legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. Minister, what specific role, if at all, then, do you see for other Palestinian factions, the PFLP, the DFLP, Hamas, the Islamic Jihad? Is there a future unified governance structure on the horizon?
Well, the PLO is the umbrella of all Palestinian political factions. If any faction wants to be part of the Palestinian polity, it has to subscribe to the mandate, the rules and regulations of the PLO. Anyone can join the PLO, but you need to accept what the PLO stands for, accept agreements signed by the PLO, and accept the political vision of the PLO. So any Palestinian faction can do so if they accept what the PLO stands for.
But do you think the everyday Palestinian people have enough confidence in the PLO today, given what has taken place?
I think that confidence can fluctuate based on what is happening on the ground. And as I said earlier, if people see something moving in terms of the vision of the PLO on a free Palestine, a sovereign Palestine, the liberation of the Palestinian people, bringing people a better future for soon, then people will rally behind the PLO, and the PLO can look inwards and think of reform of the PLO.
And there's big concerns about the ability to do just that. But let me ask you about another growing crisis in another part. When we turn our attention to the West Bank, we've seen the Palestinian Ministry, they have been raising alarms about the increasing land seizures underway in the West Bank. We're seeing reports of children, families being shot at, and reports of plans to construct more than 10,000 units in the West Bank, another 20,000 in new or existing Israeli settlements in East Jerusalem alone. On the diplomatic front, what kind of strategies are you pursuing to try and counter settlement expansion?
Well, the settlement expansion has been ongoing for the last 60 years. And we've seen more and more land grab. We've seen increased brutality. We've been seeing increased violations on the ground, withholding of our tax money, displacing people, attacking UNRWA, attacking the camps, grabbing more land for agricultural herding. And this is something new for the Palestinians. There is entrenchment and emboldening of occupation on all levels. We need to continue struggling to keep saying that this is occupied land, we have rights in this land, and we will not be displaced, and we will not be going anywhere. If Israelis want peace in the area, they cannot continue suffocating our lives 24 hours. If they want peace with their neighbors, they need to come to terms with the fact that Palestinians have their state, and that state is on the 1967 lines, and they are entitled to that sovereign state and to live in peace and security next to Israel. This is what we will continue struggling for from now until we gain our independence and our full sovereignty.
And I think struggle is the key word there, because tell me, what are the diplomatic strategies currently underway? Are they working, given we're dealing with a crisis in the Gaza Strip? Well, we're also seeing this huge settlement expansion as well. Meanwhile, aid is being blocked. It's been a month and a half now. Clearly, you're having to fight fires on a number of fronts, but is it working anywhere? What are the political solutions underway, if at all, right now?
Well, the political solution is very clear. If people comply with international law says what needs to be done. What the international community must be doing today is to show its teeth. It's not enough to put out statements. Statements are void if no actual measures are taken on the ground.
So what do we need to see done then? Tell me, what is the international community lacking? Because again, we continue to see these rulings from the ICJ, the IJJ, ICC as well. What needs to be done when people continue, children, the elderly, women continue to be killed at? We're seeing hospitals to continue to be attacked as well. It's clearly not working. What needs to be done?
What needs to be done is holding Israel to account. And holding Israel to account means instituting monitoring measures to say whenever Israel is violating the law. And Israel has been violating the law all the time. And we know there were thousands of United Nations General Assembly resolutions and hundreds of Security Council resolutions that were violated, and not one has been complied with. It is time to say or tell Israel whenever there is wrongdoing that this is wrongdoing and you need to be held to account, and there is a price for this wrongdoing. Until we start seeing that, and until we see the political will by the international community on that front, Israel will continue to do whatever it does because it knows it enjoys the impunity.
And obviously huge concerns about that. And when we look at Israel's Operation Iron Wall, we're continuing to see that lead to mass displacement, destruction in a number of places like Jenin, Tirbes and Tulkarem. And I think there's now fears that these kinds of tactics could ultimately trigger a third intifada. How would you assess the risk of a broader uprising? What are your priorities for protecting your civilians in the West Bank?
Well, with all the challenges, the impediments, the increasing incitement, the increasing violations, of course, there is very high risk. But the leadership is very much concerned on saving lives. we do not want to transfer what is happening on Gaza to the West Bank. And partly it has already been transferred. So the leadership needs to spare the lives of the people. And we need to, as I said, continue our diplomatic efforts. We do not want to go into a field confrontation because we know the results of that field confrontation.
Well, let me ask you about those diplomatic efforts, in particular, the ICJ ruling we saw in July of last year against the legality of Israel's occupation. Now, at the time, you called that a great day for Palestine. So tell me, what are the concrete steps that the Palestinian Authority is taking to leverage this legal victory internationally?
Well, the ICJ ruling has a lot of clarity, and we all know that it is irrefutable and it's irreversible. And it has told the whole world that this is not a contested territory, this is an occupied territory, and this Israeli belligerent occupation needs to be dismantled. And it has given 12 months for its dismantlement. Now, we need to see the world taking actual steps towards the dismantlement. If it's going to be dismantled in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, that's yet to be seen. But we need to start these steps. And there are steps that are doable. They are doable now in terms of what do we do with settler violence, with the settlers who are sitting on occupied stolen land. What do we do with settlement products? How we deal with settlers who have dual citizenship? How do we deal with arms sent to Israel or sold to Israel? There are several steps that can be taken. Now it's the time for the international community to put monitoring mechanisms on the various countries that have said we agree with the ICJ, we agree with international law, to see that they are complying. Without these measures and without these accountability measures, nothing will change.
So then tell me, some of the strategies you just mentioned there, what are some of the steps that you're taking on a more local front then to try and stop, whether it's settler violence, whether it's dealing with these arms and weapons as well? What are you doing then on a local front to try and protect your people?
Well, we try as much as possible to protect with the means that we have. But as I said, we don't want to go into a field confrontation that will take lives of more Palestinian civilians. We continue to work with the international community. The issue lies with the world. It's not just the Palestinians. This is not just a Palestinian issue. We are the ones under occupation. Everybody knows the nature of this occupation. Everybody knows the rights in terms of international law. It is the international community's legal, moral, and ethical obligation to come forward and say enough on this occupation. And it is time for the creation of the sovereign Palestinian state.
Well, during the UN Security Council meetings, you've called for the Palestinian Authority to shoulder its full responsibilities in Gaza. So what are the practical preparations, if any, that the PA is making to be able to successfully govern both Gaza and the West Bank?
Well, the Palestinian Authority is doing its homework. And it is preparing and ready to shoulder its responsibilities in Gaza. And today it has its staff working in the field in Gaza with whatever means it has. Of course, the needs are so monumental that it would need the Palestinian Authority and many others to chip in to meet those needs. Today, there is a plan for Gaza. That plan has been accepted by the Arabs. It has been accepted by the Islamic world. There are 57 countries that have approved that plan on the rehabilitation, the immediate relief, and the reconstruction in Gaza. And we hope that we are enabled to start working on that plan. There's also plans for the national program for the development and reform in Palestine. And there are several initiatives on strategic development and other initiatives on organizational development. So the plans are there on paper, but we need to be enabled and empowered to actually start implementing those plans. And those plans need billions of dollars. They need empowerment of the Palestinian Authority in terms of actually practicing governance on the ground.
I guess one of the big factors blocking the peace plan that's been presented by the Arab League is obviously acceptance from the US as well as Israel as well. Do you see any of the leaders there accepting a modified version of the Cairo plan?
Well, we have to keep, as I said, the windows open and keep the discussions open. I mean, it's a give and take thing. In the final analysis, what we want is to reach the goal of stopping this genocidal war and letting aid move in, and for us to be able to start our relief and construction efforts. If this needs further discussion, I think we're open for discussion. We cannot just close the doors and say, take it or leave it. But there are minimum things that we cannot go below that need to be respected.
Sure, but as we know, aid has been blocked for a month and a half. People are starving. People are dying every day in Gaza, let alone the missile attacks from Israel as well. Do you think the Arab plan has any chance of being pushed through? What are the main impediments today?
The main impediments are Israel, first and foremost, and the supporters of Israel.
But I mean, what are the main impediments to Israel accepting it? Do you feel that, again, these discussions are continuing? Do you feel that there is any solution in the coming months, or will Palestinians continue to lose their lives?
Palestinians will continue to lose their lives because Israel has no intent on stopping this war. Israel needs to be obliged to stop the war because they don't shy away from saying it. And for the last 19 months, and more so in the last few months, all we've seen is killing just the civilians. What are the targets in Gaza today? 90% of the infrastructure has been destroyed. There isn't much more to destroy. So what are the targets? Why is this war continuing? There is no justification for the continuing of the war, and an agreement can be reached if there is genuine intent on reaching such agreement.
And right now, it does not feel that that agreement from Israel certainly is there. Minister, thank you for joining us today on Frankly Speaking. We do appreciate your insights today.
Thank you for hosting me.